Kids, this is Tuesday, September 21st, and we're going to read about a kitty cat. Let's see, so you should have kitty cat paper. If you're a home child, you should have the pink paper from yesterday, unless you were also dead yesterday, and then it's on Canvas, and you can download kitty cat paper from there. Let's see, we have no new homework today. We're going to read story today. We won't get a chance to finish it because it's long, and there's lots of talking that goes into it. We'll finish it tomorrow. You will have homework tomorrow, which is just to read a short story about a kid who hates school. And then you will have homework on Thursday, but in theory, we're going to get it done together. And then hopefully, home children, as you can see me making over there, I'm going to have a weekly calendar thing that we can put up onto the wall to try and make things a little bit better for you also. And then my goal is to post Friday's e-learning Thursday after school. So those of you who don't want to have to wait till Friday, you should be able to do it like Thursday afternoon, evening, or wait till Friday. I'm happy either way. All right, covered into these bits. Did that, and I don't think we've covered our one thing there, and yay. I have no one else to torture there for now. And on this part, if you did do the corrections, make sure you email me, because I know in my classes I had kids who went through and did corrections, and then if you don't email me that you did the corrections, I can't give you credit for it, because I don't know it's in there to go look for. So just making sure if you did the work, let me know you did the work, so that I can be nice to you. All right. And we covered foreshadowing, correct? What is foreshadowing?
Story to help figure out the end.
We sounded confident there for a moment. All right, so the clues. So in this one, it has definite endings to it. It's Poe. So if you're unfamiliar with him, it's a bit on the creepy side. And so on this one, as the story starts going along, he starts planting little seeds as to the level of creepy in the story. Although I will say, your ability to predict the creepiness probably won't be that easy, because it's, again, Poe. Don't be the kid that reads ahead. Yes, I know some of you guys do enjoy the reading thing, but here's going to be the problem if you read ahead. You're going to have this thing in your head called knowledge, and knowledge can be bad because the story has things that happen in it, and you are going to want to talk about those things. So just play dumb like the rest of the kids around you. Did that. Meow, meow. Meow, meow time. All right. So as we get into story, the quiz on Friday, about a third of your quiz covers questions from this. The bad and good news is I'm not making you write stuff down as we go over it. At the end, I'll go over and talk about character, setting, and plot, but I'm not making you write them down for this one. If you want to write them down, you can. If you make notes on your pink piece of paper, you're welcome to use pink piece of paper when it comes time for quiz. If you feel strong that all the knowledge is in your brain, then you can leave all the knowledge in your brain. At some point, you get to sort of decide your own ability level as we get to move through things from there. Make sense? All right. As we start, beginning of Story Mountain, what do you call the beginning of Story Mountain?
Exposition.
What's the definition of it?
Boring beginning stuff.
Does anyone in here have Frush for composition? Just so you're aware, she hates the fact that we call it exposition, boring beginning stuff, which makes it really fun. So if you see her, you can always go exposition is the boring beginning stuff, and it makes her get all grumpy, because she has some different name for it, which is weird. Oxel.
She was talking about how she didn't like you because you called it boring beginning stuff.
Yeah, that brings me happiness and joy. Yeah, she sent me a hateful email this morning, which also brought me happiness and joy. Every year she yells at me for it, and that just makes me want to do it even more, because apparently, much like my own rebellious teenagers, in my soul, I'm also a rebellious teenager. So it takes one to know one, so yeah. But for here, our boring beginning stuff, we're going to find out about the character, we're going to find out about point of view, and then we're going to sort of get into the stuff from there. But then once it jumps into rising action, it is nothing but rising action until the very end. The Black Cat. Xavier, the light on the left, and I have you turn it on. I think it's off. And then, that should be good. Crank it down just a smidge. Darling. More smidge. More smidge. More smidge. What? There you go, perfect. Bowen.
We only did exposition, we didn't do like rising action and climax, all of that.
We only did?
Yeah, like you didn't say, like exposition.
You mean on the green sheet?
No, like we just said it, like when we said like.
Correct, because that's all I want to deal with in here. We didn't do the whole mountain thing. You're right, I was just stopping on exposition. You're good, I was confused. Black Cat. For the most wild yet most unpleasant story which I am about to write, I neither expect nor ask for belief. Crazy indeed would I be to expect it, in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet insane I am not, and very surely did I not dream it. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. Two things. We already know point of view. You took a second. What we got? Good job. First person. And we know what's going to happen to the speaker tomorrow, which is?
Die.
He's going to die. Do we know the main character's name?
No.
Correct. We don't know the character's name yet, so we'll eventually get there. Carter?
This person has itis.
Yeah, there's a lot of eyeing in there. There's a whole lot of... That's why I tried to make it obvious with the whole first-person thing. Since I was a baby, I was noted for the happiness and humanity of my personality. My tenderness of heart was even so obvious as to make me the butt of my friends' jokes. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and was never so happy as when feeding and petting them. This oddity of character grew with my growth, and in my adulthood I derived from it one of my major sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished affection for a faithful and friendly dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the satisfaction I had. Quick thing, what do we know about his personality? What about animals? He loves animals. That's important. That's part of our foreshadowing clues, is the fact that he loves animals. To the point that people make fun of him. He loves animals so much. His heart is so big. I married early in my life and was happy to find in my wife an attitude not unlike my own. Observing my soft spot for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of purchasing those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. The cat, wait, we just introduced the second character, which is going to be
The cat.
his wife, and then possibly the cat in a moment. But we now know that he is also married. And then, and what does his wife feel about animals? Keep that in mind also. They both love animals, and they have a lot of them. And I would have thought a monkey was the most important pet, but apparently not. He stresses the fact he has a cat. I would have stressed a monkey, but to each their own. The cat was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black, and friendly to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little touched with superstition, made frequent references to the ancient popular notion, which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he followed me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. What's the cat's name?
Pluto.
By the way, do you know why the cat's name is Pluto?
Because that's his favorite planet.
And why is, so going along with that one, so favorite planet connected to this cat in what way? Do you guys,
Because the cat was the favorite pet.
on the right track. Do you guys know why Pluto got the name Pluto?
Because it's the most distant planet, and so they named it after the god of death.
There you go. Because it was the god of death and the god of darkness, so he names it, and what color is the cat?
Black.
So he names a black cat after the god of death and darkness, which is also the planet of death and darkness. So that was the connection we get there. By the way,
I was going to say it's Mickey Mouse's dog, and it's like irony.
right, this was before Mickey Mouse's dog. This was in the 1800s. Mickey Mouse didn't exist. So, but you're on the right track. Let's see. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general attitude and character, through the effects of alcohol, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use harsh language to my wife. At length, I even attacked her with personal violence. So it turns out our speaker now has an issue. And what's his issue? He's an alcoholic. Is he a happy drunk? No, he's an angry, punchy drunk. And apparently he takes it out on his wife. So we went from beginning of story, happiness, loving pets, good wife, everything great, introduce alcohol, things have begun to change. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my personality. I not only neglected, but abused them. For Pluto, however, I still retained enough thought to restrain me from mistreating him, as I made no hesitation of mistreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog when by accident or through their affection they got in my way. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol? And at length, even Pluto, who is now becoming old and consequently somewhat bad-tempered, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my bad temper. One night, returning home, quite intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I thought that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him when, in his fright at my sudden attack, he inflicted a small wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than cruel wickedness, alcohol nurtured, filled every fiber of my body. I took from my waistcoat pocket a small knife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn, and I shudder while I pen this horrific crime. Pause. We're now getting into the rising action part because our man has started making poor choices. So what is influencing his poor choices? Alcohol. What particular poor choice does he make?
Cutting his
And so he had good reason for attacking the cat. His good reason being?
Reason to cut the eye out.
I would agree. Probably not the best of reasons, but he came home and he was a little drunk and grumpy. And that's when he grabbed cat, and as cats tend to do when you grab them, went hiss, hiss, scratchy, scratchy, and then cut out one of the cat's eyes. So I tried to make it as realistic as possible. Seriously, we read it in the book, and you guys don't even cover your mouth. I cover one cat's eye, and I get gasps, and all of a sudden you guys are covering your mouths. Like, oh.
Yay!
Nothing helps. I'm actually putting an eye patch over it. You just can't see it because the cat is black. So it's like a little pirate. So I tried to make it as not disturbing as possible. So now we have a cat with one eye, and we have a room full of disturbed children. Don't worry. It gets much, much worse. When you guys complained when we did Lady and the Tiger, which was a love story, and you guys were all like, love story. This one's also kind of a love story. He's married. That had love in it. When my reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the effects of the night's sins, I experienced an emotion, half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was, at best, a weak and vague feeling, and my soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excessive drinking, and soon drowned in wine all memory of the frightening deed. So, he made poor choice with cat. Has he vowed to never do it again? No. Has he stopped drinking?
No.
Has anything changed?
No.
Well, I mean, the cat now doesn't have very good vision. But beyond that, I agree. Nothing else has changed. No. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the eye presented a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then the spirit of unreasonableness. So the cat runs from him, and he feels grumpy, which now he feels he has to do something about the fact that the cat has made him grumpy. I am not any more sure that my soul lives than I am that unreasonableness is one of the basic impulses of the human heart. Who has not 100 times found himself committing an evil or a silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not do it? Have we not an unconscious need, despite our best judgment, to violate that which is the law merely because we know it to be wrong? I'm going to pause there for a second, because I think what he's saying there is the thing that connects to you guys, even if you don't realize it. What he's saying is sometimes humans feel the need to do a bad thing just because it's there to do, which seems to speak to a lot of teenagery-ishness. I think a lot of teenagers, when your parents say, don't go do this thing, like when a teacher says at the beginning of class, don't applaud, what did you guys immediately do? Which is weird. I hadn't even... Well done. So this is exactly what he's talking about in the story. Sometimes when you're told not to do a thing, it's human nature to go, and then do it anyway. When your parents say, don't sneak out at night, you're just like, okay, and then out you go. And so it's because it's like a human nature thing to be rebellious and to do the bad thing. It's just part of who we are. Sometimes it's applauding, sometimes it's talking when you're not supposed to, sometimes it's not doing homework, sometimes it's attacking a cat. Whatever your particular thing may be, this next part that's going to happen, realize it happens because he knows he should not do it. And sometimes you do a thing because you know you should not do it. By the way, what do we know is going to happen to him tomorrow?
Guys.
Keep that in mind as we go through the story. I would never give you a story that does not have a happy ending. It's just the journey may be a little bit different.
Wait, the man dies?
No, the person writing it. So at this point, well, see, that was me tapping into my teenagerishness on that one. Story. The spirit of unreasonableness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this deep longing of the soul to anger itself, to offer violence against itself, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally to complete the injury I had inflicted upon the innocent beast. One morning, in cold blood, I slipped a noose around its neck and hung it from the limb of a tree, hung it with tears streaming from my eyes, with remorse in my heart, hung it because I knew that it had loved me, because I felt it had given me no reason or wrongdoing, hung it because I knew that in so doing I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. What double poor choice does he make?
He kills the cat.
How does he kill the cat?
By
And in case don't know what noose is, this is the noosey thing that he makes and then hangs the cat from a tree. Again, does not have good reason to do it. Does it because he knows it's a bad thing to do and does it anyway. And so we'll get rid of noose and put black cat up there for that. Like, oh, not that one. This one. Actually, let's go back to, there we go, those ones. So now he hung cat. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the inferno. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself from then on to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the crime. But I'm detailing a chain of facts, and wished not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day after the fire, I visited the ruins of my house. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found with a closet wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plaster had resisted the destruction of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. Around this wall, a dense crowd of people was collected, and many of them seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with very eager attention. The words strange, extraordinary, and other similar expressions grabbed my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if imprinted upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was done with an accuracy that was truly marvelous. There was even a rope around the animal's neck. When I first beheld this ghostly sign, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. The cat, I finally remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd of people, and someone must have cut the animal from the tree and thrown it through an open window into my bedroom, and this had probably been done with the idea of waking me from sleep. The falling of other walls had smashed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the chemicals of which the flames and the ammonia from the carcass had then accomplished the image as I saw it. That was a lot to throw at you, so I'm going to pause again here. The day he hung the kitty, what happens to his house?
It burns down.
Burns all the way down. And he says there's no connection, it was just bad luck. I happened to make the poor choice of killing a cat. Same day, my house burns down. So the next day, he goes back to where his house burnt down. The whole place is burned completely away except for one wall. One wall is still up in the entire building. What is on that wall?
A picture of a cat.
Close. When they say a picture of a cat, what they say is like an impression. Have you guys ever had like clay or silly putty, where you can like take your hand and smash it against it? Or I guess for you guys it would have been the thing that you guys made and sold when you guys were in like elementary school. Slime. Same. So slime, you smash your hand into it, you pull it. Same thing here, except it's on the wall, where there is just a smashed imprint of a cat on the wall, and not just the imprint of a cat. What else is on the wall? The rope around his neck is all smashed into the wall. So all these people are around his house, and they're all looking up at the wall going, that's kind of weird, right? And they're all trying to talk and trying to figure out why there's this impression smashed into it with a little thing on it. He comes up with an explanation for how this happened. Did you catch his thinking on why he thinks this impression is smashed into a wall? Gernor?
He thinks that someone from like another house cut the cat down and threw it inside the house to wake him up.
Yeah. I hope you realize the level of thinking that goes into this. That your thought is someone saw your house was on fire and went, oh my God, I wish I could find a way to wake them up. If only there was a cat hanging from a... There's a cat! And they went over and then cut the cat down. They're like, this'll wake him up. And they swung the cat, threw it through the window, and then it happened to hit the wall right behind where he was sleeping. And then another wall smashed it into the wall, and then everything burned except for that one spot. And he was like, that was a genius way of trying to wake a person up whenever their house is burning down. And this you're like, I don't think that makes sense. And the answer is no. No, it does not. But of course, what do we also know his hobby is doing?
Drinking.
A lot. And apparently when you make that option, poor choices sort of go hand in hand with all of that. So apparently he's made some poor choices. But for him, it makes sense. And that's why there's a smashed cat impression on there, because someone threw it through there. And now their house is gone, and they have to move to a new place, and we get to start all over again. Although I had found a logical explanation, I don't think he sees the humor in that, but I do. For what I had seen, it did not fail to make a deep impression upon my imagination. For months, I could not rid myself of the specter of the cat. And during this period, there came back into my soul a half feeling that seemed close to, but was not quite, remorse. So he's saying he almost felt bad, but not quite. He got kind of close to feeling bad, but not all the way there. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me among the dreadful places which I now frequently visited for another pet of the same species and of somewhat similar appearance with which to replace it. So to make him feel better, what's he going to do?
Get a new pet.
Yeah! What? Because if your house burns down again, how else is someone going to wake you up? So this is his worry, is that now you have to go get a new cat. One night, as I sat half stupefied, meaning drunk, in a local bar, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object resting upon the head of one of the immense barrels of gin or rum, which was the main furniture of the place. I'd been looking steadily at the top of this barrel for some time, and what now surprised me was the fact that I had not sooner noticed the object there. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, nearly as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every aspect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any part of his body, but this cat had a large splotch of white covering nearly the whole region of its chest. Ooh, quick pause. One, what was the previous cat's name? What does that connect to?
Dad.
What was the word I had to make you guys to define before we started this?
Foreshadowing.
So as we're going through story, there's going to be little foreshadowing things that are popping up. One, name of cat is named after god of death. Also, at the beginning of the story, what did we find out about his personality he wanted to stress to us? How did he feel about animals?
Love them.
He loved them. And then what did we find out about him?
He's gonna die.
And, well, we also find out he's going to die. And then what does he eventually do with animals?
Kill them.
And so we start getting all this. So now he wants to get new animal. So this is the part where we start getting foreshadowing clues. Any guesses as to what's going to happen now that we find new animal?
They have to kill
That's
him.
Yeah, the cat's gonna kill him.
Ooh. I mean, it's hard for cats to pick up little knives because their little hands can't wrap around it when they try and do the stabbing motion. So I'm not really sure how the cat's going to kill him. But I like you're going with it.
They
Spilling off.
He's gonna kill that cat too because it reminds him of Pluto.
That does sound sad, but that could be. Bowen?
Cats have like knives on their fingers.
They do, but I'm not sure they're puncture report, but we'll find out. So now he found a new cat. Oh wait, except small difference. The difference between Pluto and this cat,
is a noose.
well,
It's
yes,
not dead.
that would also be true, but he talks about the fact that this one has a white splotch on its chest. So like a little thing of white fur right there in the middle, whereas Pluto was completely black. All right. So it said, this cat had a large splotch of white covering nearly the whole region of its chest. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my attention. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I at once offered to purchase it off the bartender, but he made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never even seen it before. I continued to pet it, and when I prepared to go home, the animal seemed to want to follow me. I allowed it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I went. When it reached the house, it made itself quite comfortable at once, and immediately became a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, so we found new pet, things are going great, everything's back to normal, everything is happy, new pet, wife is happy, there's an animal shows up out of nowhere. Let's get back to the happy part of the story. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. Oh, never mind. This was just the opposite of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was, I became disgusted by its evident fondness of me. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty, preventing me from physically abusing it, I did not, for some weeks, strike or otherwise violently abuse it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unimaginable loathing and to flee silently from its revolting presence, as if from the breath of a plague. So how does he feel about New Kitty?
He loves it.
Like,
He loved not so much. He definitely is having issues with New Kitty too. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it also had lost one of its eyes. So to adjust my picture, there we go. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who possessed that feeling towards animals, which had at once been my distinguishing trait and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my hatred for this cat, however, its attraction towards me seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with an insistence that would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with this loathsome purring. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly trip me up, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my clothes, climb in this manner to my chest. At such times, although I wanted to destroy it with a single blow, I was still stopped from doing so, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess this at once, by my absolute fright of the beast. So he hates the animal, but he's also deathly afraid of the animal. And the animal, and how does the animal act towards him?
He loves him.
Nothing but love. And the more love the animal gives him, the more he starts to hate the animal, which leads to our fun stuff. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in my current felon's cell, I am still ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me had been heightened to a level that would be almost impossible to think of. He just dropped another foreshadowing clue. Spilinov,
He's in prison.
he's in prison right now. And what's going to happen to him tomorrow?
He's gonna die.
So now we know he's in prison, and we know he's going to die. So maybe it's not the cat that killed him. The cat set him up for a crime, and the cat has framed him. And the cat's part of the cat mafia. So that's why we're finding out so yeah, we find out more of our little foreshadowing clues from there. So this little white thing, the little thing on the chest, that's the part we get to next, where things now begin to change. But that's for tomorrow. What is your homework for tonight?
Nothing.
Correct. Should you read the story?
No.
Exactly. One, it's depressing. Who wants to read a depressing story all on your own without my wonderful voice to bring it to... Does this go back to the whole thing we talked about earlier about the rebellious nature of humans and doing the thing we're not supposed to? Yes, Mr. Brovicast, I know. Now, don't go out there seeking out cats. That's not where I'm trying to get you to go with all of this. But for the most part, we are going to finish it tomorrow. We're going to talk about the end of it tomorrow. Oh, trust me, we're going to talk about the end of it tomorrow. Spilinov?
So my neighbors, they got a black cat with